What's up guys, Shawnthebro here, and we're back for another episode of the Super Smash Brothers and Platform Fighter tutorial series. In today's episode, we're going to be going over more menu navigation. We're going to be going over navigating the pause menu, but we can also use this to improve some of our main menu navigation and all of our menu navigation going forward. So starting out here, you see that I have paused my game, and now I can press the down arrow key, or whatever my down input is, to go down and cycle through my options. The dark gray with the black border is the selected option. So I can go up and I can go down, and I'm navigating this by listening to the inputs that I have set up in the game, and the player controller is sending these inputs to the corresponding widget, the widget that is focused. Which right now we've only really set this up for the pause menu, but it will work for any widget that we spawn. And then from there we can go ahead and resume. We don't really have confirm inputs on any of our menus for keyboard or gamepad selection yet, so I use my mouse. But we can also easily add that. For now, we just want to make sure we can navigate the menu. And additionally, as I was saying, this can work on the main menu. So if I press my left and right inputs, I can go between these two options on the main menu. But we can improve this system that we have to make it for any number of options on this menu instead of these hard-coded two. And we'll go back and update this after we update our pause menu, since we are going to implement that method that supports any number of buttons or widget items. So with that said, we can go ahead and get started, but before we do, if you want to get caught up in the series and check out everything we've done in the Super Smash Brothers and Platform Fighter tutorial series, such as game modes, stage selections, pause menus, and a lot more, I'll link you to the entire playlist right here in the top right corner, so you can check out all of that and learn how we got to this point. Alternatively, if you don't care about that and you only care about the pause menu and widget navigation in general, it's perfectly fine. You do not have to follow the entire Platform Fighter tutorial series playlist to implement those features. I do recommend you watch the two previous episodes on the pause menu, because that's how we spawn our pause menu, that's how we set the reference or the pointer to it, and that's going to show you how to get to the same point that we're at in the series today. If you are interested in learning how those things work for the pause menu, I'll link you to the first episode of the pause menu in the Platform Fighter tutorial series right here in the top right corner. With that said, we can go ahead and get started. So this is a code and blueprint tutorial series. We're going to be using the code, player controller, and menu navigation that we already set up, and handling those inputs in the pause menu widget blueprint. So pretty much everything is going to be in the blueprints today. Starting out, we can go to blueprints, functional BPs, widgets, menus, and we have our pause menu. In the pause menu, we were pausing the game when this menu was constructed, and then we had on pressed for our different inputs, such as resuming the game, starting a rematch, or going to the main menu. Then we also had two events that we had captured from the widget navigation interface, which is our code class that we set up that I was telling you about. So this has any inputs that we may want to perform on menus, and we use our player controller to capture these inputs. And then we call the corresponding function to execute the widget navigation interface functions, passing in the focused widget. And we made sure in the previous episodes that these were printing. We knew they were firing, but we weren't really doing anything with them. In today's episode, we're going to make sure we can actually move the focus selection due to this. So first things first, I want to implement a way to move up and down between these widget items. In the main menu, we did left to right between the battle and the options button. It's pretty much the exact same process. I'm just going to refine it a little bit, make it a little bit easier, and definitely a lot more expandable. So we're going to want a function. I like to call it move selection, and this is going to change which widget item that we're focusing on. So functions plus function, again, I called it move selection, and I added an input parameter by pressing the plus here called direction, which is an integer. So moving up is -1, moving down is +1. So based on that direction, we can tell if we're moving up or down. To change this type, you can just click on the parameter that you added and change it to integer here. Then we can go into our new function, move selection, and we're going to add all of this logic. It may look like a lot, but it's very simple. So essentially, anytime we're moving items in a widget, we need to make sure that we're above or at the minimum value and below or at the maximum value. So say there's three elements, like in the case of this menu, you'll see that we have resume, which is index 0 or the first button, and then we have rematch, which is index 1 or the second button, and then we have main menu, which is index 2 or the third button. So if we're on resume and we press up, we can't go anywhere unless we want to circle around back to main menu. But if we press down, we can go from resume to rematch. And if we're on rematch, we can go either up to resume or down to main menu. Say we go down, and we're on main menu, we can't go down unless we want to restart back up at resume, but we can go up to rematch. So this is what I mean. Resume is the minimum value here. This will be index 0. And main menu is the maximum. This will be index 2. So this function is basically just going to make sure that based on the direction we're trying to move, we stay within those bounds. To do this, we need to add 2 variables to our pause menu. And I've added current selection and max selections. So these are both integers. You can add them by going to variables and pressing plus variable and change the type to integer for both of them. Then compile once you've created them, and you can go to current selection. It defaults to index 0 or the top selection. Max selections, however, should have a default value equal to the number of inputs on your menu. So I have 3 different buttons that I plan to use on my menu, index 0, 1, and 2. Since we're starting at 0, max selections isn't going to be 3, it's going to be 2, 0, 1, and 2. We can also get this dynamically, but for now, let's just go ahead and assign that to our maximum value. We'll go over making it dynamic later. And what we're going to do is take our current selection and add the direction that we're passing in. Remember, this is -1 if we're going up, and +1 if we're going down. And we're going to check to see if this is less than or equal to max selections. If it is, we're just going to use that value, this addition result, and apply it and make that the new current selection. If it's not, we can actually make it loop over. So like I was saying earlier, if we press up on resume, we want to make the current selection main menu. If we press down on main menu, we want to make the current selection resume. So if we go back to the graph here, we have current selection plus direction is less than or equal to max selections. If this is true, then we want to make sure that this result is greater than or equal to the minimum selection, which is always going to be 0. So we have current selection plus utilities operators add. Then we're going to add direction that is passed into the function. And we're going to check and see if this is less than or equal to max selections. Okay, that's how we get all this right here. Now the result of this is going into a branch. If this is true, then we're going to make sure that it is above the minimum value, which I was telling you. So we're going to take the result of the addition right here, make sure it is greater than or equal to 0, the minimum value. And then this result is going to go into another branch. Now I'm going to clear this, but what you just saw is everything right here. If we are both less than or equal to the maximum and greater than or equal to the minimum, that means we can just hard set current selection to the result of the addition. We don't have to do any manual modification of it. So set current selection, and it's going to be equal to the result of this addition. However, if this branch returns false, this means the result of this addition was not greater than or equal to 0, which means we have a negative value. That case would come up if we were on resume and we pressed up. So instead, what we want to do is set it back to main menu, which is index 2. More specifically, it's really just whatever's in max selections, because our highest index is going to be our last selection. So if we go back to the graph here, what we're going to do is set current selection to be max selections. Perfect. Then if this first branch returns false, this means that the result of current selection plus direction was not less than or equal to max selections. And that means we went from main menu and pressed down. So we're down here somewhere. Again, in this case, we're going to want to move up to resume, or more specifically, the first index. And the first index is index 0. So if we go to the graph, we're going to automatically set current selection to be 0 at this point. Regardless of which path we take to set current selection, all 3 paths are going to meet up here, and we're going to set focus to the menu item. This is a new function we're going to make, and I'll get into this in a second. But essentially what we're going to do is just change the style of the buttons here to indicate to the player or the user which choice they're really selecting, because when they're all the same button, you can't tell which one you're on. But when it was darker with the black background, we knew which button we were hovering over. So go back into the graph and let's make a new function, plus function, and I called this set focus to menu item. I also added an integer input parameter here called index to focus. It is literally the index of the element on the widget, remember 0, 1, and 2, that we want to focus, or we want to set to be the hovered state of the button. But in this case, it's only ever going to be current selection. So we can call our new function and just pass in current selection here. And all paths should do this. So this is move selection. Now, if we go to set focus to menu item, this is what's in here. So this is what you'll have when you come into the function, and what we need to do is determine what this index maps to. So we know as developers that this is 0, 1, and 2, but the game doesn't really know that unless we put them in some sort of array or container. So we could put them in a vertical box and get the children and access the index that way, or we could make our own array here. I'm going to make a local array and just determine this when this is called. So there's a node called makeArray, which allows you to pass in elements of the same type and create an array of that type. You can press add pin to add elements. So what I'm going to do right now is just add elements, and I'm going to add the 3 buttons that I plan on being able to navigate through. We want to keep these in the same order as they are on the screen. That way we don't have to do any hacking logic. We can just assume that whatever index we're on corresponds to this button. So if we're on index 0, it'll be resume. If we're on index 1, it'll be rematch. If we're on index 2, it'll be main menu. You can grab your variables here. They should all be variables, but if they're not, you can click on your buttons in the widget designer and check is variable so that you can access them in the graph. Then we're going to drag them in. So resume button is index 0, rematch button is index 1, and main menu is index 2. Then you have an array of button objects. This array is going to go into a for each loop. So we're going to loop through all of them. In a for each loop, you can tell what array index you're on. So we can check the array index that we're on against the index that we want to focus to determine if the button that we're highlighting or hovering over is the one we're currently looping over as well. And the reason we want to do this in a loop instead of just directly accessing this from this array is because whenever we change inputs, we not only want to set the focus button to the hovered image or the hovered style, but we also want to reset the other buttons to the original style. Off of this for each loop, we can drag off the array index and type equal, and get this equal node here, and then check it against the index to focus. Drag off of this equal and put it into a branch. This is going to be in the loop body, so you're going to connect the function to the for each loop loop body to the branch, and that's how you'll get all this right here. Now this branch, this condition, will return true if this array index is equal to this index to focus. That means that this is the button that we want to hover. So at that point, we want to take the array element, that will be the array element or the button at that index. You can see I have my reroute nodes here, and we want to set focus to it. Focus is good for a few reasons. We can actually use it to determine which button is focused. If a user presses the confirm input to make a selection and we get the focus button, we'll know it's that one. So array element, set focus. Very simple. We're just setting focus to this button object. And again, this true path is the path if we are the hovered button. So we also want to grab the style off of this button object reference. Style. And specifically, I'm going to use the variables appearance style. You can use the set style node as well and split the style, but I'm just going to edit the style directly in this case, as that is what we've done in our main menu as well. So now I have my style for my button. And what I can do is call set members in button style. And we can pass in our structure as a reference. And when we click on this node, we will have in the details panel the different options that we want to have as pins. Now, depending on your version of the engine, you also might just get this full node, set members in button style, with all these options without having to manually select the pins. Don't be alarmed if it looks like this right away. What we really need to change is just the normal image, at least for now. So you can either add everything like we've done here and just make sure yours matches mine, or you can just add the normal image, which is going to be in appearance, normal. Then you can right click on the normal and split the struct pin to get the bigger node that you see here. At this point, we're just going to line them up. So normal draw is image, normal tiling is no tile, normal mirroring is no mirror, normal image size is 32 by 32. These 3 structures untouched is perfectly fine. But the normal image is the one thing we want to change for sure right now. And I'm going to make this my hovered button image, which is main menu gray button hover. So just for reference, this is my unselected button, my unhovered button. and this is my hovered button. So they're just two different styles for our buttons. And then once you've done that, you'll have everything you see here. So the only thing that's left is the false of this branch. So if these array indices aren't equal, that means the button that we're looping over is not the button that we're going to focus. And if that's the case, that means we want to set the style of the button to be our regular gray button, not the hovered one. So we can get the style again, which we're doing here. We can set members in button style, passing in the struct ref. We can select the normal as pin, and then we can change the normal image to our regular gray button. And again, just to show you, this is the non-hovered version. Okay, so now this function is good to go. So we can go back to our event graph and we can look at our event move up and event move down. In here, we want to call move selection, passing in the corresponding direction. So event move up is going to call move selection with a direction of -1, indicating that we're moving up. Event move down is going to call move selection with a direction of +1, indicating that we're moving down. Then we can compile and save, and we're good to go here. But there's one other thing that we should take care of that we did not take care of yet, and that is when we come into the widget initially. So you may have noticed when I showed you the example earlier, but if I am to just load this game up and go to the pause menu right away, none of these buttons are hovered by default, so technically the user is not aware of which button they're starting on. You could assume that you're starting at the top, but that's not really what you should do. So we should make the first index hovered by default. And we can do this easily by going to the pause menu, go to event construct, go to the last node here after set game paused, and we can call set focus to menu item with index to focus as 0. So by default, when we come into this menu, the first index, or index 0, will be hovered. And there you go. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode on widget navigation and improving your pause menu in your Super Smash Brothers and Platform Fighter tutorial game. If you did, please subscribe and consider joining the Patreon, YouTube membership, and Discord subscriptions for extra benefits and more support to the channel. Thank you so much to everyone who has. If you ran into any problems following this tutorial or any of my tutorials, feel free to join the Discord community. There is a link in the description. I would be happy to help you out. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Shawnthebro, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye, guys.